when we come back to these mandates, and I know that you operate on the federal level, but I think provincial has a lot to do with how people view federal politics as well.
Yeah.
Um,
For better or
Now,
for worse,
for
depends
better or
on where
for
you
worse,
are.
yeah. But in this case, for worse, because we look at two conservative-run provinces, Alberta and Ontario, and the two premiers who supposedly supposed to be conservative were almost flip-flopping on the issue of mandates and vax passes, and eventually went to them. And it almost seemed like they caved under the pressure to Trudeau, to the public. And now that we're having a provincial election, I don't see the Ontario PCs working as hard to say that we want to end the stuff that we brought in, right? Because there's still people getting fired in Hamilton region and all those kind of things over mandates that, are not, for some of them, there's no vax pass. Why can't they go back to work? Why has on the provincial level, they've taken that, the conservatives taken that approach, and then federally, why hasn't the federal conservatives kind of spoke out against that almost?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's go 30,000 feet on this. For
Yeah.
conservatives, COVID is a killer issue. And I say that not just because of the single issue vax mandates or vax passports or anything that has to do with that.
Yeah.
COVID has allowed government and government intrusion in your life, the thing that we don't like as
Yeah.
conservatives, to get out of control.
Yeah.
Our spending is out of control. The idea that you would turn on your TV every day and listen to some guy at a podium that you've never listened to before tell you whether you should stay home or eat in a restaurant. Like, we've never had that kind of relationship with government.
Yeah.
I've never turned on my TV and listened to a politician about whether to go to a restaurant or go to a gym. And all of a sudden that happened. So for conservatives, this was a killer issue because we had a responsibility on public health at the beginning when we didn't know all of these things.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then it was sort of these lingering effects of it that needed to keep up with much more left-wing governments across the country and across the world. And if we
Yeah.
weren't doing those things, we looked irresponsible as conservatives. So this was never going to be a winner for us. But to your point, I think it could have been less of a loser for the people that are part of our base, that are part of our movement. And now more and more people that are not part of our movement that are seeing what's going on there is totally void of common sense.
Yeah. And going back to why did they not say anything to the provincial leaders that were like, it almost seemed like at one point they're like, no, we won't do that. It's against rights. It'll cause division. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, sure. Let's start some division up in this joint. Right.
Yeah, look, I mean, part of it is I think a division of responsibilities. Like we don't necessarily tell them where to spend their healthcare dollars
Yeah.
or how to create their education policy, although there is sort of strings attached to the big taxman collector
Yeah.
pile of money that comes down. And then for a lot of these local situations, like, look, COVID was different in different places. If you
Yeah.
lived in rural Manitoba and you watch the news in Toronto, you think that we all had,
So
COVID
zombie
and we were,
apocalypse.
yeah, totally, like licking each other and everybody was passing it around.
Yeah.
And if you lived in, in sort of a country that was agricultural, in the country that was agricultural based, where you don't see very many people, this is like, right? So
Yeah.
local decision making has to play into this, where you're not going to make the rules, you're not going to make the same rules in southern Manitoba or in the northern parts of Alberta or BC as you would in a city where you live in a building in a block of 45,000 people.
Yeah. I see that point. I just think for the voting base, the ones that say they vote provincially conservative and federally, I think they have a hard time dealing with some of that leadership
I agree with you, and we're seeing a lot of that now out there, right?
It's a big disconnect because traditionally, if I voted conservative, say in the province of Ontario, I would be glad to vote conservative for to federal, but it almost seems like to the base they're not talking to each other. They're all doing a different thing, and it needs to be rectified in terms to bring that trust back from each province because let's face it, Ontario pretty much speaks, and it's unfair, and I